Christmas. It's a time for fun and joy, whether it's for presents, candy, or simply good old-fashioned family time. However, what if I told you two people have impersonated the one and only St. Nicholas? That's right, these two took the look of Santa Claus himself and went around, whether trying to steal Christmas or add a bit more of their own charm to it. And when it comes to these two, let's be honest, Halloween's always kind of fit them a little better. The Grinch, the bad banana who is as cuddly as a cactus, and Jack Skellington, the pumpkin king of Halloween Town. I'm your one and only host, Heaven, and today we're gonna figure out who will win on the Battlegrounds. Whoville, a city that loves Christmas more than any holiday in the whole wide world. However, the Grinch, who lived just up north of Whoville, did not in the slightest. Now please, do not ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be that his parents were just nowhere to be seen. It could be that his looks just weren't to be. But I think the main reason was that his heart was simply 2 sizes too small. This tiny heart caused the poor Grinch to be isolated by the Whos, only having his trusted companion Max as his only friend. He hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season, and he would do anything to stop it, to stop the noise that these Whos would bring down on him. However, on one Christmas Eve, thanks to a little accident from Max, he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. He would steal Christmas from those pesky Whos. So, that's exactly what he did. He stole everything, from the presents to the feast to even their Who hash. Surprisingly, he actually accomplished it, and was ready to push his sled over the edge of a cliff. However, despite all of their goods being gone, Christmas still came, all the same. Grinch was baffled. He couldn't understand. But after thinking about it, he realized that Christmas wasn't just about the presents, but it was something more. And from that day on, the Grinch's heart tripled in size. After grabbing the presents and saving them from falling off the cliff, he ended up joining the Whos, mainly Cindy Lou Who, and even cut the roast feast. He ended up truly changing. Oh yeah, did I mention him saving those presents? Yeah, to do that, he pulled the sled up with his bare hands, even in some versions just lifting it over his head. While this isn't exactly useful in a fight as it's mainly lifting, this does show a bit how much of a mad lad this dude is in terms of strength. However, before we get into that, I quickly want to get rid of a misconception when it comes to a composite Grinch, mainly his size. So, in the Jim Carrey Grinch, it's pretty obviously shown that he, alongside every other Who in that movie, are almost as tiny, if not tinier, than a snowflake. However, this is just one version, and we're compositing for this one. But you could argue that him, alongside the other Whos, are the Whos from Horton Hears a Who, which is a reasonable argument, since they do seem to be the same species. However, there's one huge problem with this, and that's the Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat. That's a weird title, saying that out loud. Oh god. The Cat in the Hat straight up interacts with the Grinch, and if we're going off of height in a canon sense, this short came out during the time when Dr. Seuss was alive, so it should be at least somewhat considered, but that Grinch should be at least normal-sized height, since, well, you know, the Cat in the Hat isn't as small as a speck. So, yeah, I just wanted to quickly throw that out there so I didn't have to deal with any of the commenters down there who was gonna say, well, the Grinch is actually very, very tiny, so this fight is actually a horrific stomp, and this wouldn't even work. Sorry, not happening. Now, let's get into the strength. When it comes to his strength, alongside durability, he's been launched by mines, survived a crash test, and has been able to beat up kids with a simple air hump, who can survive launches from his egg launcher gun. A very odd weapon. However, one of his most impressive feats actually comes from a simple flamethrower. This was able to incinerate a huge Christmas tree to ash in an instant. While I unfortunately could not find any concrete calculations for this, Something I did find was the amount to incinerate a large building, which, while I am going to say is likely not even close to that, it should be at least heavily down there, with this number coming out to about 1.70 kilotons of TNT. Again, much lower since the tree is nowhere near as wide or as tall, but this is the closest I could get to a calc, so I say it's at least around there, most likely below. However, when it comes to speed, oh god, can he punch fast! He has his normal stuff like being able to hit sound, dodging gunfire, outrunning explosions, or flying a sled that could keep up with Santa's. However, one of his most impressive speed feats was in the book Max Digs a Hole, or He Meets Max. Gosh darn it, I don't remember the name. In this book, he's able to, and I quote, dig halfway near to the closest star. While we don't have a good time frame in the book, in that weird puppet show, it's given a time frame of about 25 hours, though it's also given a much tinier distance. However, a calc I found was able to put this feat, given the distance with the puppet show, at still over 314 times the speed of light. This dude can punch really fast for an old fella. Also, what the heck? What the heck? Come on, man, you're already beating Rudolph Jackson in speed. That's not fair. Not fair at all. Oh well. And you're also beating that poor fool in intelligence, given, while yes, he is a tad messed up in the head, especially when he's played by Jim Carrey, his intellect is still pretty impressive. He's made all of his weapons all by himself, and he was even able to trick Cindy Lou Who was a pretty crafty person, being able to make her own trap for Santa, and she pales in comparison to the mean one. And I think this leads us to the best part of the Grinch, being his insane amount of weapons and abilities. It's shockingly diverse and really useful in the combat scenario, despite a lot of them not really being combat weapons at all. For example, he has, what I already mentioned, a rotten egg launcher, which can smash walls, equivalent to about 0.005 tons of TNT, which he's been able to tank before via scaling to the Who's. He also has both a jetpack and a rocket spring that can boost him into the air, a slime shooter to encase people in slime, snowballs to freeze someone solid, octopus climbing tech to climb up walls, though he can also simply do this with his hands, or the Grinch copter to let him fly into the air. He also has slight toon force, being able to become flattened without any problems. He can burp deadly toxin that can knock you unconscious, or even reveal invisible objects, like lasers? Why? 'Cause he's the Grinch, that's why. He also has a submarine, which can destroy walls with enough force to generate 1.23 tons of TNT. He also has both the Sound Sweeper and the Dark House. The former can alter noise to make it sound like a cow's noise, or just make you completely mute. And the latter can make things so dark you can't see your own hand in front of your face. However, this isn't where it ends with the Dark House. Not only can Grinch already just destroy sound by stomping on it, but the Dark House can also warp reality itself. The Dark House has been able to make duplicates of people, turn objects into different colors, make things liquid or solid, move around in unnatural ways, turn the entire area into abstract colors, or turn your state of being into sound waves. Kind of sounds like overkill for why he was using it, since the reason he was using it was simply just petty revenge on Cat in the Hat for getting his way while driving. Also because he was feeling a little mischievous that day. He also finds himself a bunch of items from the 2018 Grinch film that are very, very useful. He has ninja stars that can ensnare someone in rope, a ladder that springs upwards, there's boots that let him also go upwards, and a bouncy ball that lets him jump high into the air. Before we get back into his weapons, let's quickly go over the powers the Grinch has, as he has quite a few. For one, he can change his size, turning whether as small as an ant or as massive as a building, and he can do this insanely quickly too. He can also have lightning strikes from the clouds, turn his head completely 360 degrees, have his eyebrows come off his face and grow in size, or just straight up read your mind. He also has a thought version of himself, who, if is thought of, has the possibility to straight up attack the person who's thinking of him, like the Cat in the Hat, and was literally able to steal stuff from Little Who's dreams. What the hell? Why does the Grinch have all of this? Why? The worst part about all of this is that we're not even done, as we still have a few more weapons left to go over, starting with the infamous paraphernalia wagon. This wagon has the capabilities of summoning monsters of all kinds, from the abstract to the simple. There's monsters of all kinds, and it's even implied that if the little boy hadn't been there to stop the Grinch, he would have been able to let all these monsters loose onto Whoville. However, that's not his only backup, as he also has Max, his trusty companion. Max may not seem like much, but he actually has the capability of hurting the Grinch, which, as we've stated before, is really darn strong. On top of that, he also has himself a hover pad to fly and an antler that can grab stuff. Now let's get into his last two items, starting with his candy cane. It may seem simple, but it has a lot of versatility, from flying, a light source, magnet, grapple, stretch, and even can shoot out a net. Best of all, he has two of these on hand at all times. Last of all, he has his trusty dusty sled, which has a surprising amount of items and options. They have rocket boosters to go even faster, a vacuum to suck things in, candy canes to grab stuff. The bottom half can either extend forwards or go upwards, and has several cranes to grab stuff. With all this stuff, you might be wondering, how does the Grinch ever lose? Well, there's quite a bit, actually. One, and this goes for Max too, he's not a fighter in the slightest. Aside from a few skirmishes here and there, mainly with the Cat in the Hat, he really doesn't go ever in fist to fist. He would much more prefer to stay in the back seat and just not fight at all. He's also slightly insane if you're considering Jim Carrey into this, having conversations with himself in his cave all alone like a madman. Furthermore, the paraphernalia wagon only really works if the person is afraid of its contents and is able to survive. If they are, they'll be let free. Also, if anything regarding his past is mentioned, like the night when nobody cared, or regarding his mom, he'll break down and not be able to handle it. Finally, and most importantly, The Grinch has easily the worst Dr. Seuss movie in the form of the 2018 one. This isn't important in the slightest, but I'm gonna not handle this disrespect towards my Jim Carrey Grinch. This is the superior life form, deal with it. However, no matter, even with all of this, it didn't stop Christmas. And after his heart changed for the better, the true meaning of Christmas came through. So never forget, while he may be seen as a villain, he had one of the biggest changes to heart that will ever be known in fiction. Halloween, a time for fright and terror, some say, a time for tricks and treats, others say. However, there seems to be something nobody seems to really bother to ask, being who runs the whole darn thing? Well, that's where we enter the Pumpkin King, or simply known as Edgar. Edgar was the infamous Pumpkin King, bringing terror to all, but due to age, alongside the rules, he had to step down and give the rule to someone else. Edgar wasn't pleased by this, but went along, hoping he could manipulate things from the shadows. Spoiler alert, this plan did not succeed. So, a competition was held, pitting the two most voted to the ring, with the first being the one and only Oogie Boogie, and who would eventually be the winner of this role, being the one and only Jack Skellington. Jack became the great Pumpkin King, one for the ages, even if he did end up losing Oogie as a friend because of it, because reasons. However, doing the same thing year after year, it began to tire the poor pile of bones out. So, one Halloween, he went on a walk with his pet dog Zero. However, he ended up discovering the doors to other holidays, and, by chance, he went down the Christmas one. It was a polar opposite to his own town, and he wanted to replicate it, wanting to spread cheer in his own way. However, this version was, let's just say, had a lot of improvement that needed to be made. It left the world in, let's just say, a doozy, leaving many traumatized children and adults alike. It got to the point where the government themselves had to shoot down his sled. Jack was disappointed, but after singing to himself, he became more in love with his Pumpkin King role than before, going back to save Santa since he kinda unintentionally left him with Oogie Boogie. Oh well. He ended up taking down the bag of bugs once and for all and saved Santa, restoring Christmas back to its normal self. While things might have been a disaster, he did, somehow, find love in the form of Sally, most likely boning her later that night. Well, that's one way to ruin one of my family members' favorite Christmas movies. Oh well, but how does this fare for the Jack? Well, for starters, while not looking like it, he's actually a pretty tough individual. He's fought armies of monsters and bugs in the video games, being able to take giant hits from monsters, has fun with the likes of Sora, Donald, and Goofy, yes, those three, and was able to take on Oogie Boogie when he transformed into a building-sized kaiju. However, his most impressive feat was being shot down by the military themselves, like we mentioned before, generating forces equivalent to 14,000 kilojoules. Just a lot more above, making the Bonehead one tough nut to crack. With that said, it is important to mention that, despite being a skeleton and therefore having no nerves, he can still feel pain. How? I don't know. Going into speed, this pal is very, very, very fast. He's able to beat Oogie Boogie in races as children, is able to dodge electricity, and was able to pilot the sled that was able to catch up with Santa's, putting his punching and movement speed in the sled at around 0.5% the speed of light. And Zero can keep up with this, meaning he's arguably even faster. I think this is also a good way to enter into Jack's arsenal and abilities, starting with his trusted companion, Zero. As a ghost, Zero is intangible to pretty much anyone with normal physical attacks, while he himself can touch physical things. Speaking of, Jack has also shown the ability of touching intangible beings, being able to pet Zero and hurt the ghosts in the video game. Continuing the list with Jack's actual stuff, he has stuff like that skeletons would have, like having no organs or being able to take off his head. However, he's also been shown to have a bit of resistance towards electricity, cold, and fire attacks. In fact, in some cases, electricity can actually heal him. He does have other stuff too, which admittedly is a little less important, like a whip or a double jump, but I believe it's time to get into his more useful stuff. Beginning with his sled, as I've said before, it's very fast, going thousands of times faster than the speed of sound. Admittedly, it doesn't have much else other than the speed, but it's still useful if Jack needs to go into the air. His most used weapon in his arsenal is the Soul Robber, which, despite the name, doesn't rob the soul. However, while it doesn't do that, it does work as an elastic whip that can grapple and even shapeshift itself to fit a combat scenario. On top of that, he has a blue version he can use for a few seconds that makes the weapon even stronger. He also has himself a crystal bottle, allowing himself to heal. Speaking of, let's talk about Kingdom Hearts, and Jack's powers there, since he does get a lot of healing stuff. He has several ways to increase both health, alongside his 4 magic attacks. Starting with his magic health increases, Jack has Cheer, Jackpot, MP Rage, and Treasure Magnet to get his increases, giving him constant healing and magic gains. Before going to his 4 main moves, it's important to note that while Jack is a pretty good chemist, since, healing kind of relates to that in some way, being able to make chemical reactions while without exploding anything, he's not an expert or anything. It's just good enough. Going into his 4 moves, he has Blazing Fury to blast people with fire, Ice Terror to freeze people solid, Bolts of Sorrow to bring down lightning, and Ghostly Scream to summon dark spheres to crush his enemies. Pretty good moves overall for Jack, but we're not done just yet, so don't even worry about that, as we have his mainline weapons to talk about now, the big ones. For starters, since Nightmare Before Christmas is a musical, Jack sings a lot. And in the game, if Jack gets enough pure singing and performs a dance, he can launch a bunch of musical notes from afar to explode against his enemy. It does take a bit of time to activate and finish, so it's not exactly reliable, but it is very powerful and easily his best ranged attack. Jack also has the Bat Lamp, which allows him to see in the darkness, Frog Gun to shoot out gas and possibly even freeze you? It's a little confusing how that works. A Bat Boomerang to throw from a distance, Pumpkin Bombs to explode pretty good, Stretchy Ghost to stretch his torso upwards, Acid Baths to turn Jack into goop, and Gumshoes to crawl up walls. Now onto his 2 forms that he can take, starting with the Sandy Claus outfit. While it doesn't seem to make him any stronger, it does give him a bunch of toys to use, like Jack in the Boxes to freeze people, giant snakes, killer toys, and more! Last, but certainly not least, he has the infamous Pumpkin King form. This form makes him much stronger, allowing him to be erupt in fires and even shoot out fire. While it doesn't last forever, it has a good enough length of time to be reliable. On top of that, Jack can drink the spicy bottle to unleash the full power all at once to launch himself forward. However, this does only last for 6 seconds, so it isn't very reliable. But it is still pretty useful, especially for anyone who's in his way. Speaking of, I guess that means we should go into some weaknesses now that we mentioned that little caveat with the 6 seconds. For one, he's admittedly kinda naive, trusting people he reasonably shouldn't, mainly Lock, Shock, and Barrel, who he ordered to keep Santa safe, so they took him to Oogie Boogie. So, not a great moment for Jack. On top of that, Jack has a shocking little amount of ranged items, really only having his music as his most useful one, and I guess to a really lesser extent, boomerang bats. However, despite this, there's a reason he's the king of Halloween Town. Whether it's giving fright to all of Christmas or his own town, beware the Pumpkin King. Before we continue, this video is sponsored by me. Yes, me, with my very own Ko-fi. That's right, Ko-fi. If ever wanted your very own matchup? Well, now you can. With $50, I'll do your very own matchup. Note that I do have rules that you must follow, which I will have listed in the description down below. If you don't have the money for that though, you can simply just donate any lesser money just for general support. It would mean the world to me. Alright, back to your regular.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and the Who slept soundly in their cozy beds, all waiting for Santa Claus to hand their gifts one by one. One Who heard a loud rumble on the top of their house, but wanting Chris' gifts, they stayed in their bed. That was their mistake. Sneaking down the chimney was someone as cuddly as a cactus, as charming as an eel, the one and only.
Hey, keep it quiet.
Sorry, the one and the only Grinch. He slithered towards the Christmas tree and was about to take their presents. However, just then he heard the sound of a window opening. The Grinch stopped, not knowing if it was one of the Who's. However, after a moment of two of nothing, Grinch began to take the presents, one after one after one. That is, until he felt a bony hand on his next reach for a present.
What the? Who are you?
The bony figure looked just as confused, but introduced himself with kindness.
Well, I'm Jack Skellington, but I'm taking Sandy Claus's role for today. Just finishing my last house here.
The Grinch's eyebrows furrowed. He wasn't going to let this bony figure ruin his plans.
Whatever you're doing, stop at this instant, or you'll face the wrath of the Grinch.
The Grinch? Oh, I saw you on my list. I'm sorry to say, but you're on the naughty list today.
The Grinch interrupted Jack with a good punch to the jaw, sending him reeling backwards. Jack snapped his jaw in place as his sockets narrowed towards the mean one.
If you're planning to stop Christmas, you've got another thing coming.
Ah, so you want a battle. Sorry, but that just won't do. I want this done.
The Grinch was interrupted by Jack swinging his soul rubber around Grinch, slowly throwing him around until the Grinch flew into a Who's room. The Who grumbled but remained asleep as Grinch got up, frustrated. However, he looked over to see the Who's dream, a giant fire truck of his own. Outside the room, Jack finished placing his gift stand, proud of himself.
Ah, the children are sure to love this. That I'm sure of.
A gush of water suddenly splashed the bony imposter, smashing through the window and into the outside. Grinch laughs maniacally and takes the remaining present before stuffing the tree out, only for the daughter of the family, Cindy Lou Who, to ask why Santa's taking their tree. While Grinch begins to explain, Jack lands on his sled. Zero barks in worry, while Max, who's on the roof, looks down in confusion.
All right, that guy will be a problem. Zero, lead the sled. We're taking out this imposter.
Max is shocked and looks towards the chimney, where Grinch has just finished pushing the tree up. Max barks wildly, causing Grinch to grab his snout, looking at the dog.
He's planning to take me down, eh? Well, for that, he'll pay.
Grinch and Jack mount their sleds and begin flying in the air. Jack pulls up the soul robber once more and reaches the mean one's sled, tying around Max's seat. Max barks and begins to bite at it, while Jack throws boomerang bats towards Max, who is able to dodge. Grinch pulls out his egg launcher, taking shots at Jack's sled, getting good damage done on it. Grinch eventually pulls out a nitro eggs into his gun, shooting one last time, striking the middle and completely annihilating Jack's sled. Jack is knocked unconscious by this, but ruining a bit of his Santa outfit. However, the soul robber still holds around his wrist, keeping him hoisted in the air. Zero barks in anger as he zooms to his owner's side and wakes him up. But Jack gets a determined look as he begins curling up the soul robber as the Grinch cackles.
Oh, Maxie, with that bonehead dealt with, these Who's Christmas will be done for.
Oh, I wouldn't say that just yet.
Grinch turns around in shock as Jack begins assaulting Grinch with blazing fury, causing Grinch to yelp in pain. Max jumps to protect his owner, biting Jack's ankle and slightly breaking it. With the chaos, the sled begins going toward the snow near Mount Crumpet. Grinch looks down, yelling in fear.
I'm going to throw up and then I'm going to die!
Grinch glares towards Jack and punches his head clean off his neck, making his body fall off the sled in the confusion, while Grinch is able to re-control the sled.
Phew! Almost lost my cool there. Max, get the dark house's setting ready. I'll get him set up.
Max nods and jumps onto his hover pad, flying off. Meanwhile, Mort, the little lemur, is going through dust and holding up a map of sorts, when Jack's head falls on top of him and crushes the poor creature. Jack opens his eye sockets, puffing out smoking gas, while Zero flies down next to him.
Okay, this guy is gonna be trouble.
Oh, Jack reattaches his head to his neck and crawls out, only to see the Grinch on his hovercopter, smirking towards his adversary.
All right, you've gotten my attention. Let's see what you got.
He snaps his fingers, sending lightning striking down. Jack staggers back. He seems to have been hurt, but then he smirks.
Thanks, my good friend. That got me right back to my feet.
Jack pulls out a pumpkin bomb and throws it towards the greeny foe. Grinch begins throwing them back to the sky. He's already made too much noise thus far. Any more and his plan might be ruined. However, this lets Jack get a good hit on him with the soul robber, wrapping it around him before throwing a Jack in the box. This causes the Grinch to be frozen in place, falling down from the sky. Jack jumps up onto the now frozen imposter, causing the copter to fly around in all crazy directions, while he stays on the back and punches him on the top of the head.
All right, bonehead, keep hitting me!
They eventually fly into an abandoned restaurant, smashing through the window, leaving the two coughing out cobwebs.
Alrighty, I'm done messing around. You're done for, Mr. the Grinch.
Oh, but we've only just begun.
A hatch opens underneath the Grinch. While at the dark house, Max presses some buttons and starts up the dark house, shining the reality-warping beam towards the building. Jack is confused at first, but soon textures begin to change, tables start to wobble, and Jack's very state of being becomes nothing more than sound waves.
What? What is this magic?
A hatch opens below Jack and sends him tumbling, but he ends up in a completely different area now. He's now in the paraphernalia wagon. Monsters shoot up from different angles, jumping from abstract locations. However, as Grinch went back to stealing Christmas, Jack wasn't scared in the slightest. He was actually enjoying himself.
Wow, these monsters are truly terrible.
However, as Jack jumped around and fought the monsters with ease, he began to think about his role as Santa Claus.
What am I doing? I'm the Pumpkin King! I must stop this madness and take down that dastardly fellow.
Jack rips his Santa Claus outfit right off, throwing the hat into his pocket and chugging some spicy bottle to erupt in flames. Jumping onto a spring, a balloon monster appears, but Jack simply goes through it and pops it, also exiting out of the wagon and back into the warped building. Jack looks around as duplicates of himself jump around from his body and go around the place. However, he's able to make out the hole Grinch went down and jumps through, splashing into water. As he swims through, he hears a noise rumbling, and soon enough, Grinch's submarine becomes visible, with all the presents on the back. Jack dissolves himself into a goopy puddle to dodge, falling into the water while the Grinch passes by. As he does, Jack reverts back and attaches himself with his sticky shoes, climbing up.
Oh, this is too good! These presents will be gone by the end of the night! What?
Jack throws one of his presents into his vehicle, revealing a huge snake trying to bite at the Grinch. Just as other presents exit out of the bag, there is more presents that the Grinch grabbed other than the Who's, you know.
Oh, shoot!
Grinch, in his panic, ends up going up a pipe and smashing a part of the wall, sending all of them into Mount Crumpet. Max yelps as he tries to jump down to save the Grinch, but Zero grabs him by the collar and floats high into the air.
Oh, you think that's all the tricks I have, don't you?
In an instant, Grinch triples in size, towering over the now much smaller Grinch.
Well, give me your best shot!
Jack looks up, but ends up getting a determined look as he swirls and transforms into the Pumpkin King, fire glazing his pumpkin head. Jack jumps towards Grinch, leaving scorch marks on Grinch's fur as he grabs him and throws him like a rag doll. Grinch notices music notes appearing, with Jack collecting them. Seeing them as a possible problem, he stomps on some, stomps on others. But Jack still gets enough to begin his song. Dancers begin appearing behind Jack as he begins to sing with grace, with fury. Grinch notices more dancers appearing and getting annoyed by the music, the noise. It's gonna wake the Who's up any minute. He whistles to Max.
Get the sound sweeper!
Max, now determined from the order, snaps the collar off his neck and lands into the snow. Max runs off and gets the vacuum. Zero tries to stop him, but Max is able to move past him at incredible speeds. Max turns on the vacuum and aims it at Jack. As the Pumpkin King is about to send his most powerful attack, his voice goes mute. He can't talk. Jack is befuddled, bewildered, as Grinch grabs him, the fire hurting a bit. However, Grinch pulls out a giant snowball on Jack, dispersing the flames and freezing him solid. Grinch smirks as he moves around in a circle before slamming Jack directly into the ground, breaking him from the ice, incredibly broken and battered. Grinch reverts to his normal size and leans on the presents he has. He orders Max to strap it to the sled as he walks to Jack.
Now you see, you can't stop these precious Whos and their Christmas.
Jack is disappointed. Despite all odds, he had lost. He laid on the ground, unable to move as Zero floated by his side. However, as Grinch smirked, a noise started to grow. It started out low, and then it began to grow.
Now that was a Christmas battle if I've ever seen one. Lovely stuff. But in the end, the bad banana has triumphed over the Pumpkin King. But some may say why. Besides, this is a pretty unpopular opinion to have. Most people would consider Jack the winner. Well, let's start out with the loser, since, well, as you'll soon see, this was kind of a humongous stomp in Grinch's favor. Jack did have some good advantages. Starting off with the fact that Jack is just a much better fighter. Grinch just never usually fights, more so doing tricks and the likes, while Jack has actually fought in hordes of monsters. He also has certain ways of countering Grinch's arsenal. Not a whole lot, mind you, but ways like healing from electricity via the lightning bolt, bat lamp countering the normal setting of the dark house, and himself being able to handle pretty much anything from the paraphernalia wagon. On top of that, he has healing items, meaning that he would be able to heal himself throughout the fight, while the Grinch had no such item. Also, while this isn't really huge, Zero couldn't be touched by the Grinch or Max since, well, he's a ghost. However, this is where everything begins tipping into Grinch's favor, starting with stats. When it comes to speed, Grinch's punching speed would be just below 30,500 times greater than anything Jack could reasonably dodge. Same with strength, as Grinch's fire breathing would be just about 479 times greater than Jack's best durability feat. Note that it is very likely lower than that, but it's still to a much higher regard to where it likely wouldn't even matter. That's not even going into the fact that by the end of the story, it's quoted that he gets, and I quote, the strength of 10 Grinches plus 2, when the sled begins to go over the cliff. Yes, this wouldn't apply to this feat specifically, since this was from the flamethrower, but his best physical feat, scaling to the egg launcher, is already about 4 to 5 times stronger than Jack's on his base. So the increase would only be better for the Grinch and just make him much stronger. The worst part, we're not even done yet. Grinch has much better weapons and abilities. Sure, Jack's weapons are more combat central, but Jack has a lot of ways of countering his moves, like freezing items, burping to knock Jack unconscious, reality warping with the dark house, or straight up ending his musical abilities with the sound sweeper. Also, while Zero was immune to any attack Grinch or Max threw, that wasn't really important since they didn't need to hurt Zero, they needed to hurt Jack. And Max really is just a much more useful dog companion. Max actually has ways of hurting Jack, like with just simple bites, which were able to hurt the Grinch, which, as we've already stated, is physically stronger than Jack. On top of that, he has much better range. Stuff like his egg launcher or slime shooter give him much better range to keep Jack at bay, whose best range option gets countered hard by the sound sweeper, or heck, simply by Grinch stepping on it. Finally, Grinch is a lot smarter. Jack isn't stupid for sure, but Grinch has made several devices from the Who dump and was even going to succeed in his plan of destroying Christmas if it wasn't for the Who's Christmas spirit. So, in conclusion, while Jack has the better healing options, the Grinch was much stronger, faster, more durable, much better weapons and abilities, much smarter, and had a more handy companion to bring a nightmare to Jack before Christmas and steal his victory.